All right, so the next speaker is Paiman Pakzamir, who is a man with a very analytical and systematic mind, whose thinking is grounded in science but also open to exploring reality with other tools and approaches. He's a man who's accumulated much insight and wisdom through his own life journey, and now he wants to share with you an opportunity to explore the nature of reality, ancient wisdoms, our purpose, and the relevance to our daily lives as we travel on the journey. Please welcome Paiman.
Hi everyone. Thank you. That was a philosopher of life wisdom. I'd never heard of this, so it's a good title. Thank you. Analytically minded, yes, to some extent, but no longer is the case. Like, still analytical, but a lot of life experiences, so it gives you a lot of different perspectives. And I want to confess something. Ross didn't have any idea of how and what I'm going to present, but he actually put together an introduction towards my talk. So he's given you a snippet of what I'm going to talk about. This whole journey, is that too loud?
No.
Should I hold it here?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, great. The whole journey is, of course, that journey of life. And this brief session that I'm going to have for about 50 minutes to an hour is taking you through a 5-hour seminar that I've started running since December last year. And there is a reason for that. The seminar is towards the journey of life. And being analytically minded, as was mentioned, I always wanted to prove everything with science. And I thought that's the language and that's how we've been trained. But throughout this journey, I've figured out that science is one of the languages. Very valid, but it's one of the languages that will try and is trying to define our reality. So let's see how we go with that. And one, yeah, it works. Okay. The seminar has got different topics, so it's been divided into 4 different sections of 50 minutes each and followed by interactions. And that's the whole idea of the seminar, that we have an unbiased environment created where we can share knowledge and share experiences without feeling that we're biased or people think of us differently. And then based on that, we can learn a lot. And I've certainly, throughout the different sessions of the seminar that I've run, I've learned a lot through those. Going through journey of life, then we go through human brain and its plasticity. Interesting that Ross was talking about it, and how it affects, has an impact on our journey. That's the journey of life. Then we look at the human heart as an organ in our body. And is it just an organ that pumps blood, or does it have other things? Does it have intelligence, as we have it embedded in our languages that we know? I have to cover quantum physics in there as well, as weird as it may sound, but it's physics of the small. And that's very related to our being and who we are and our reality. So we explore about that as well. Consciousness and our reality, how it actually affects our journey. So that's another piece that we've covered in there. And then physical death. Interesting, Ross talked about it, the end or transition. And so it's a lot to cover, and in this hour, I'm not going to be able to go through all the scientific discoveries that I present during the seminar. But please trust me for this hour that whatever I say and I present here is based on scientific discoveries and understandings. And I'm quite happy to share with you afterwards if you would like to know where they're from. Why the journey? Quite often here, what's the purpose of life? Does it matter if we pay attention to it or not? And this has been throughout our history for thousands of years. And I believe that because of these questions and responding to these desires that we have from within, that we've made a lot of discoveries and progress. Are we all connected as a humankind? Is that just a technology? Because now we realize, compared to 30 years ago, that we are very much connected through technology, the gadgets that we have, mobile phones and internet and all those sort of things. But is that just at the extent of our connection, or are we connected at much deeper level? And if we are, what is that? Is everything connected within this biosphere that we call Earth? From the water and the soil and the bacteria and the rocks and animals, the trees, plants, human beings, the atmosphere, all of that in this biosphere that we call it Earth. Are we all connected through all of these? And not only that, are we connected to the whole universe, to other planets and stars? And if we are, through what? Is it through physical means, or is it consciousness? What is that? Also, does it matter if we are connected or not? Do we really need to be connected, or we have to be isolated? Competition or cooperation? We look at our world, and competition and survival of the fittest has brought us to where we are. Nothing wrong with that at this stage, but do we need that continuing on? Because as human race, we are actually evolving. We are at a different level. Is our reality based on cooperation and collaboration, or do we still need to stay in competition? So I am the best, and I will do whatever I can to stay the best at any cost. Or is that via corporations that I hold your hand and you hold my hand? Through the collaboration, we achieve a lot more. Unity of vision for humanity and our world. I came to know Theosophical Society through this parapsychology, and I didn't know anything about it, but when I noticed on that, I think it's a bookmark, that as you come in you see it, talks about unity in diversity. I've seen it in different places, and I love that. And the example that I always use is, I like red roses. If I walk into a garden, which is hectares of red roses, it's nice, but it's the same. But if we have different flowers with different smells, different colors, every bit and piece of it makes it really more interesting and more profound, and you want to look at it more and more. That's the example I use when I look at the unity and diversity with humanity. We are all different flowers, and we have different colors and different races, different belief systems, whatever we have, but we're part of this whole garden. So unity and diversity, do we need that? Do we need unity of vision to be able to comprehend it and then make a better world for ourselves? And also, has nature provided our bodies with tools to achieve goals for this journey? Journey of life. We all know that one day we come to this world and one day we go. What happens in between is what matters, and what makes this journey really interesting and fruitful. At the point of conception, from that one cell, it grows into about 26 billion cells at the time of the birth, and continues the growth throughout adulthood to 50 to 100 trillion, and that's 100 with 12 zeros in front of it. 100 trillion cells. Each one is a living organism, and they know what to do. They know how to reproduce, they have their own way of thinking, and all those sort of things. Cells make tissues, tissues make organs, organs make bodies. So when we go back to this, all these organs and the things that we have in this, they all matter. When we look at their physical body and look at different organs, as an example, the heart beats 100,000 times in a day, pumping the blood, 5,000 liters of blood through a vascular network that goes, if you put them in series, 100,000 kilometers. That's going around the perimeter of the Earth 2.5 times. We have the brain, which has got 100 billion, that's 109 zeros in front of it, brain cells that are called neurons. And they're communicating, sending signals throughout this whole nervous network of our body, which if we put them in series, they go and extend to 100,000 kilometers. That's again 2.5 times around perimeter of the world. so amazing. The immune system, how it knows how to fight the viruses and keep this body safe and healed and healthy. And not only that, it knows when there's a new predator, a virus comes in, how to find out how to fight it, and then not only learn it, but keep it and also pass it on to the next cell that's going to be reproduced. We know that every minute around 20 million cells die in our body, and then around 20 million are made in the next second. So it's an amazing machine. All the other organs that we can think of, they're all doing all of these things, and they're happening all automatically without us thinking about it. If I wanted, when I think about it, if I wanted to manage all of that, first of all, I don't think that we can, we're able to, but imagine that if we are, the whole day is going to be spent trying to manage this whole thing, and we have no time to do any other thing. But this magical machinery that we have does it all for us automatically. Very importantly, from the time that we are the actual babies in the womb of the mother, the learning starts. And that learning continues throughout our life, through to adulthood. It's through, initially from the parents in the family, and then through the actual education system, the culture, the actual country that we live in, and it keeps going and continuing. We are the main participants in this, and that's very important to realize. The overall scenario of this journey may seem a bit different, or sometimes being out of hand, out of our control, but the main thing is that the fruits of this journey is for us to pick and use. And everyone's journey is unique. That's another thing which is amazing. I like to look at the two organs, as I mentioned at the beginning, the human brain and the heart. And the reason for that is they have a very big impact in this journey of life. And they have and they give us ability to do things differently in our life. It's going to get a bit more sort of technical, but I think you'll be happy to have a look. The brain, based on the MacLean's model, which was introduced in the 1960s, it talks about the triune brain. And that is the brainstem, which is the seat of our instincts, and not fight, flights, situations, digestions, reproductions. All the automatic things that are mentioned, they are run by this part of the brain. And that's one of the earliest parts of our brain. The next one is the limbic brain, which is, and by the way, that what we've got it in common with the reptiles. That's why it's called, another name for it is reptilian brain. The other one is, which came into being afterwards, is limbic brain. And we've got it in common with mammals, so it's called mammalian as well. And that's the seat of emotional responses, immune responses, all those things. Then we've got the neocortex, which is the latest part of our brain, and that's about 75% of our brain size is the neocortex. That's the human part, more of the human part of the brain, and that's where is the seat of our thinking and all of the things that we can relate to our human side. Now, the triune brain, up until about 5-10 years ago, it used to think that they're distinct and they're not related to each other, and everyone does its own and that's it. But now we're finding that they're all connected actually, and they have impacts on the other parts. There's a model that I can use, and that's, if we imagine that this part of our hand is the brainstem, this will be the limbic brain that covers it, and this will be our neocortex. So if I put them all together, that you can see that they're all connected. And in fact, in human beings, the neocortex part of our brain is the part that can control the other parts as well. So that's where we can lower our blood pressure. We can lower our heartbeat. We can even, the actual rhythm of the breath, we can always change those through the neocortex, the ability that we have as human beings. I like to talk about the conscious and subconscious one. Sorry, I think I'm rushing through this, but have to rush through it a bit to make the time. I don't want to take too much of your time. A lot of these things that you see, they are covered in more details during the seminar. So there are a lot of scientific experiments that I would share during the seminar, and then we all share our thoughts around them as well. The conscious and subconscious mind at this stage. According to cognitive neuroscientists, by the time that you are about 30, 35, or 40, it differs between different people, about 95% of our day-to-day activities come from the subconscious mind, and only about 5% comes from the conscious mind. Subconscious mind is good, it's vast, and it's really important to have it. But a lot of our emotions, a lot of our behaviors, a lot of those come from the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is below consciousness. We're not aware of it. So that's where there could be a problem if we're not aware of certain behaviors that we do. Conscious mind, on the other hand, is where our neocortex, related to the neocortex, which is more of a human brain that does a lot of the thinking, plannings, and all that. But during day-to-day activities is only the 5% of it. The 95% of subconscious, 50% of it, these are just rough figures. So they're not exactly that, but they're rough figures around it. About 50% of the 95%, which is subconscious, was programmed during the first 6 to 7 years of our life. As a child, that time is the programming state of the brain. So a lot of learnings from the family, even the way the parents behave, or we don't need to tell the child not to do this or do this. They just, by observation, they learn, and it becomes part of the automatic programming of the brain, the belief systems, all of those, they get programmed during that time. The other 50% is through the actual society, the education system, the culture, the belief systems, all of those things have another impact. So there we go. By around 35 or 40 years of age, we have got a set of programs that are running our life, and they have an impact on our day-to-day activities. We all have these programs in our, that relate to our childhood, and they are affecting our decisions, actions. Sorry, I'm holding this up because decisions, actions, emotions, behaviors. They all depend on the subconscious mind and how we behave. Now, some of these programs are good, like there are survival things. Like as an example, a child when it learns to walk, we've all observed the toddlers. They stand up, they take the first step, and they fall, and they'll learn through these. And the more they do it, and they start learning how to walk, and then it becomes part of their subconscious programming, and they don't need to think about it anymore. Imagine if we didn't have that subconscious programming as an adult. Every time that we want to start walking, we have to think about how to do this and take the first step. It'll be enormous. We won't be able to cope with life. So subconscious programming is important and good, but that's where we need to pay attention is some of the programs that are running our day-to-day life, are they helpful to the life that I want? And if they are, fine, and if they are not, then there need to be some changes. Changing the subconscious mind's programming is not as easy as positive thinking, that some people may think about it. Positive thinking relates to the conscious mind. The subconscious mind needs to have its own language and needs to be reprogrammed. The way to do it, there are tools to do it, but it's not by positive thinking, definitely. Positive thinking is good to keep us positive, but if we want to change a program, a behavior, or a belief, or an understanding, we can't do it by positive thinking. It's like if you have a program running on the computer doing certain functions that you wanted, and it's been programmed to do certain functions. If I wanted to do different things, it won't happen unless the programmer goes into that program, changes the program, and put the new codes in there through the language of that program, and then the program is going to do what I want it to do. So pretty much the same with our subconscious mind. So if we want to change something in that, that's what we need to do. There are languages there are ways that we can do, like meditation, like hypnotherapy, those kind of things, if we want to change. Perception and belief. I got this from a dictionary. Perception is the ability to see, hear, or become aware of something through the senses. That's very important to understand, through the senses. And belief is, of course, acceptance of something that exists or is true, especially one without proof. We create conditions for our lives, and they are affected by our perceptions and belief systems. Remember, that's the subconscious mind. We don't think about it, but we take it as true. It's because of the perceptions that we have. If 95% of our day-to-day life and decision-makings are run by the subconscious mind, then our perceptions actually create our reality. This is where we need to really be mindful of. You know, the certain things, perceptions that we have got, whether they are right or not, whether they serve our purpose in life, that's the question for us to know. But they're creating our reality and how we see the world. I picked that and put it up because when you look at these two, from his point of view, the number is 6. These perceptions, from the place that he's looking at that, the number is 6. But the other one is yelling and saying that that's 9, but that's from his point of view. How true is that when we use our perceptions to believe that's the true thing and the way we see it? Later on in the consciousness, when we look at it, we look how our brain actually constructs things based on our experiences. Whether they're true or not, whether they're correct or not, that's something that can be questioned. Alright, I thought I'll put that in there as well. I'll talk about this in more details during the seminar, but the theta waveform is where the actual, it is the door between consciousness and subconscious. So if we want to reprogram our subconscious programming, that's where we need to go to the theta brainwave, and that's to do through meditation and also the hypnotherapy and other tools that we can do that. The question, like the statement that we used to keep hearing, right, that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. So pretty much saying that, you know, the way who you are or how you are is pretty much set in concrete and you can't change it. But it turns out even scientifically that we can, and that's through neuroplasticity. Thanks, Ross, for intro that you gave. Neuroplasticity, relatively new. We used to think before that the neurons, the brain cells, they're all connected and they're glued on. So that's why, you know, the old mentality, the old views that we have is not going to change. But recently, when I say recently, it's relatively over the past 30, 40, 50 years, they found that the neurons actually not glued on. There's a space between them. They call it synapses or synapse, depending what accent you want to say it. And they transmit information, and the more they transmit through it, they wire together more. So they say nerve cells that fire together wire together. If you think of it like muscles, you go to gym and exercise certain muscles, and they become stronger the more exercises you do. Same with the nerves, the nerve cells. The more they communicate, the stronger they become, and that's how we rewire and make a new habit, and, you know, disconnect from the old habit. If I use this example, let's think about the two neurons that we have here, and if it's a habit, very simple, it's not like this, but if it's a habit that we have like that, and it's just been, and we want to change that habit to a new one, we need to start practicing and changing our habit. And this one is going to start looking at the new way of doing things. And the more we do that, the more we practice that, it's like muscles. It's going to build and become more and more and stronger and stronger. So in the end, we find that we we disconnect from this way of thinking and then rewiring our system to the new one. And so that's at a very high level and very simplistically how we can achieve to change. And that's the network of neurons. 100 billions upon 100 non-zeros in front of it. We have 100 billion neurons that connect like this, and they give us the new behaviors and the new learnings and things that we have. The brain doesn't know the difference between real or imaginary. It sounds a bit weird, but that's really true. There are a few experiments that I'll talk about during the seminar, but I thought I'll pick one of them here and talk about it. Learning piano experiment. What they've done, scientists, they've got 3 groups of people, and they want to see the brain, how it actually wires itself. The first group, they say an hour a day for 2 weeks. They come to this room, they teach them how to go through the theory, and they've got a piano there, and then practice it as well. The second group, they just say, come here for 1 hour a day, and for 2 weeks, do nothing, just do whatever you like. The third group, they say, come here, they go through the theory, and they get them to imagine, and also visualize the actual piano and the keys, but there's no piano for them to practice on it. At the end of and before the experiment starts, they take their brain scan, and then after the experiment finishes, they scan the brain as well, and they say that they see that the new neural networks created with the first group who did the actual theory and also the practice. The second group who didn't do anything, of course, there are no new neural connections in their brain. The third group is the interesting one because they went through the theory and visualization, but they didn't have the practice. But their neural network was the same as new neural network that were created, the same as the first group who actually practiced it as well. So there are a few experiments like this that show that even thinking and imagining is got a lot of effects. The reason I brought that up was to do with stress. It was interesting that Steve mentioned that we're running really fast-paced life, and we can be full of stresses and running around. The consequences of having those stresses is our health and a lot of other issues that it does. In nature, stress is good, fight and flight. If a gazelle is being chased by a lion, it needs to go through that stress. And if the gazelle is sick, it's not going to think about the pain that it has in his leg or whatever. Everything is going to shut down, and the whole blood is pumped to the muscles and says, run, because if you don't survive this, it doesn't matter whether you've got pain or not, you're gone. Or at that moment, I'm pretty sure they won't think about reproduction at all. And then let's imagine that the gazelle somehow escapes. After about 10-15 minutes, the gazelle goes back to grazing, the homeostasis. They don't think about the stress and what happened and all that, they just graze, keep grazing. Humans are different. The same effect, if we are stressed, every other, like the healing, the reproductions, all those sort of things, they put aside because that's how the brain works. It says, let's deal with this stress, everything else is not that important. The problem with human beings is we don't, after 10-15 minutes of the stress gone, we don't go back to homeostasis. We just keep doing it and keep stressing about it. And because the brain doesn't see the imaginary or real any differences, so as an example, if I had an argument with the boss at work, it's done, finished, I'm coming home, and I'm at home, I'm still thinking about it, the whole brain is still ticking and ticking. And what's going to happen is the brain is going to look at that as normal state, and it's going to run me through it, and it still produces those hormones that are not helpful for my health and every other thing. So that's where we've got to be very mindful of the stresses that we have in life. Again, during this seminar, we just go through how to deal with it and how important it is to manage those. I wanted to mention, I don't know what. One important part, I'll say it here as well. One important part in here is, okay, how do we do the change? The process of change, yeah, we looked at the theta brainwave, we looked at meditation and the hypnotherapy. The other part of it that we can is the process of learning, and that's going from the three brains that we talked about. From the neocortex, which is the thinking brain, the learning involves the theory, and we need to think about it and then plan for it and read. And then you go into the limbic brain, which is the feeling of it, that's the practice and all that, and then the actual automatic part of our brain, that we need this whole thing to work and gets programmed into our brain. I had a slide, but I took it off, so I can't go more into it, but it's possible. It doesn't have to be through therapy. We can do it ourselves, but just by going through the three different parts of the brain that we mentioned, by planning for it and doing it enough that the actual brainstem gets programmed in there automatically. Then that's the new behavior that we can. Let's move on to the human heart. I used to think that the heart is just pumping the blood and that's it. But it turned out when I saw those, electrically the heart is 100 times more powerful than the brain, and electromagnetically is 5,000 times more powerful than the brain. And not only that, it actually has its own intelligence, which is different from the mind. Recent discoveries, past 30 years, there are actually 40,000 neurons, brain cells, that sit on the heart, and that's really different from the brain. In our languages, in old traditions, we always talk about, my heart tells me this, and I felt this, and all of that. I used to think that these are metaphors, but science now is proving that they are not. They're actually scientific, and they're actually there. They've done the measurements. They're actually seen the neurons, and they've done experiments to prove that. I'm sure that most of you have seen this. We generate electromagnetic fields around us, and that is the carrier wave. Which gets modulated with our feelings. So the feeling of love, compassion, anger, or hatred, they all get modulated on this electromagnetic field that the heart emanates. I'd like to quickly talk about modulation and what it means. Think about radio stations, channel 101.1 as an example, the FM. The carrier wave is that one, which is 101.1 megahertz. That's the carrier wave. What happens at the radio station, all the music, all the talks and everything, they get modulated. So they will put it on this carrier wave, which is 101.1, and then gets transmitted. It's everywhere, it's here as well. But because we don't have the tools to see it or feel it, we don't know. The tool that we have is the radio. So when you tune your radio to that 101.1, which is the carrier wave, they actually synchronize, and that gets downloaded into your radio. The radio has got some electronics in there that demodulates, so it takes the actual carrier wave away from it and ends up with the actual information that was transmitted, the music or the sound or whatever it was. And then through electronics, it just puts it out and you can hear it. Same principle applies to the carrier wave that we have around us. So the feeling of love, compassion, and everything else that we have gets transmitted. You know how I said that with the radio station, when you tune into that frequency, you will get the actual information downloaded. It's the same for us with every other electromagnetic field holders. So other human beings, even animals, even the plants. Those who've got pets, I don't know whether you've experienced it, I'm pretty sure you have. They actually get affected by your emotions. If you're happy or if you're anxious, your pet actually feels it. is due to this electromagnetic field that you emanate and they receive, and vice versa as well. I used to laugh at this, that some people, when they plant some flowers or vegetables, they actually grow really well, and they actually talk to them. I used to laugh at it, but really, well, that's true. It's got to do with your heart and how you communicate with that, because the plants have got electromagnetic fields. In fact, everything has got it on this earth. The heart is an information processing center and is in constant communication with the brain. These two in constant communication. There are experiments that have been done. I won't be able to go through them, but I'll present them at the seminar. That shows that it's the heart actually that sends the signal to the brain, and then the brain knows what to do. We think of the brain to be everything and does everything in our body, and true that it does. It governs everything in the body. But without the signal from the heart, the actual brain does not really know how to and what to do. And not only that, the heart actually receives information even before you see it. This is very interesting. It seems that the heart is connected to a field of information that receives, sends the signal to the brain, then the brain knows what to do, interprets it. This is where the actual key point is, because the brain interprets the information that it receives based on the filters that we have. And those filters earlier on we mentioned, they're based on our perceptions and how we built those filters, the way we see the reality. Very important. So we receive, our heart is connected to the field of information which is correct. So the heart receives the correct information. The way we interpret it with our brain is what makes the difference. And that's where we need to clear up this whole communication. They talk about heart intelligence, that's flow of awareness, understanding, and the intuition experience. When the mind and emotions are brought into coherent alignment with heart. Coherence is very important where the focus is. Look at this light. It can only travel so far. But when you put it in coherence, you make the laser, and that's this dot that you can. It travels a lot more. So intensity and ability becomes a lot more and a lot better when we're in coherence. And that's the whole rhythm between the brain and the heart. Once they're in coherent, we can achieve a lot of things. Also, we are connected to all other electromagnetic fields, including the Earth, and also the cosmos and the stars. They all have electromagnetic fields that we are all connected to. Very quickly about quantum physics. Quantum physics is the physics of small subatomic particles. Sorry, I don't like to go up like this. That's the only way that addresses. If I go like this, you wouldn't receive it. So physics, the smallest amount of energy that can be measured. That's quantum. And then quantum mechanics is the science of very small. It explains the behavior of matter and its interactions with energy on the scale of atoms and subatomic particles. You know, Nikola Tesla said, if you want to understand how you want the universe, you got to think about frequency, energy, and vibrations. So there are a lot of merits to these things. 4 of these that I wanted to talk about, they're some of the main concepts of quantum physics. They're very important in our world. By the way, no, I'll say it later. Quantum superposition. So wave particles duality. So a particle can behave as a particle or can behave as a wave, and it depends on the observer. It is very weird, but that's how it works. So the actual particle decides to act as a particle, like as a wave, when the observer is observing it. That observer doesn't necessarily mean that has to be a person. It could be a measuring device or things like that. So that's very interesting. We go through the experiments during the seminar. You don't have time to go through it here. Quantum entanglement. Once particles are connected. If you separate them, and it doesn't matter what sort of distance they are apart from each other, you do one thing to this, and the other one feels it on the other side, reacts to it on the other side. You put one here, one put in the moon, they will do, and there's no time lapses between them. And that's a bit different to what Einstein said, theory of relativity, that nothing travels faster than the speed of light, 300,000 kilometers per second, that's it. But he called it spooky action at a distance, that was a fact. But it was a theory at the time. Around 1960s, John Bell, for the first time, experimented it and proved that that's correct. There's no time lapse between the two entangled quantum. And now that entanglement is being used in quantum computers anyway. Quantum tunneling, another weird one. Particle tunnels through a barrier that it could not have overcome. So a particle is here, and then the next minute is the other side. It just seems that it's gone through it, but how? But that's the effect, the fusion effect that we get in the stars like sun. So that actually works and happens. Weird, but it is. Many worlds interpretation. So by the way, these theories that we see, they don't come up, like, Paiman as a scientist is not sitting there and saying, okay, well, now I'd like to come up with this theory. There are some mathematical calculations and things that they do, and based on that, they bring their theories, and then they need to experiment and see if it's proven or not. So this one says that, that wave-particle duality. So the particle decides whether it wants to behave as a particle or wants to behave as a wave. So once it decides, the other one collapses. Many worlds interpretation says that the other one does not collapse, it goes to another world. And that's why there are many worlds. So based on that, there's a Paiman here as an IT consultant. In another world, I might be a pilot. In another world, I might be a cleaner. In another one, and so on and so forth. That's basically what the theory says. But that's an interesting one. During the seminar, I explored it more and more. Quantum physics is what runs our world at the moment. So electronics is based on quantum physics. If we think that it's weird that it's not going to work, it actually does. I'm taking photos. I wanted to move quickly out of that. Interesting that Steve was talking about energy, everyone did. We're 99.999% energy and only 0.001% matter. Have you heard of that before? Yes, you have, yes. So I looked at this. When we look at the actual atom, there's a nucleus, there's proton in there, and you've got the electron. I took these sizes that they've got here, and I just enlarged them, just for us to visualize. If we enlarge a proton to a 10-meter truck, and that really is a 10-meter truck, I googled it and got it out of Google. The size of electron, based on those measurements that we had, is a marble. So a proton will be a 10-meter truck, electron will be a marble, which is 1 centimeter across, and the distance, it will be 500 kilometers. Look, the truck is in here in Melbourne, and the marble would be in Mildura, somewhere around there. In between, we used to think there was a space, but it's not, it's energy. And if you do a bit of a calculation, the area of this whole circle or sphere really is about 785 square kilometers. It should have been like, the whole sphere. It's a lot more than that. But just to give us a bit of a feel for what it is, this is energy in space. We said that we're made up of 100 trillion cells. That's 100 with 12 zeros in front of it. Each cell consists of 100 trillion atoms. So that's 112 zeros in front of it. So 100 trillions of this is in each cell of you, and then 100 trillion of these cells makes you. So that's where that comes from. We're 0.0001%. So this physical body is only just 0.001. So really, when I think of it, my reality is more energetic. And that's where we can do a lot of magics. Look, we all experience what Steve did with the sound, which has got to do with our energy. We've heard of energy healings. We've talked about all these sort of things that relate to energy, because we are an entity that's energetic. Consciousness and reality. What do you see here? Is that 4 parallel lines? Horizontal? I can tell you, I can't see them being horizontal. They're actually not. But when you look at them in reality and look at these, they actually are parallel. But our visual, the way we've been tricked, our brain is tricked, is not telling us that. It tells us a different story. What do you see here? If you've seen this before, please don't say anything. But if you haven't seen it, what do you see in this picture?
Koala bear?
Is it? Does anyone else see it?
Some animal.
An animal. Wow.
No, it's a person. Oh, it's a person. Right in the middle.
Yeah, it is a koala bear. But it's interesting, when we look at it, we try to interpret it, we try to come, because first of all you look at it and say, no, I can't see anything, but someone else says, oh, I can see an animal, then you become focused and your brain starts looking at it from that angle, and then gradually you build up. In other sessions that I've had, that people start saying things, oh, it looks like a bear and all that, and then gradually everyone starts seeing it and coming up with the right answer. Yeah, there's a koala bear in there.
Yes.
I'm playing with your brain. Is this going up and down on the right? The ball, is it going up and down?
Yeah.
Okay. Have a look at this dot here. Now where there's... Interesting. This is actually an experiment. I've got a few of these experiments during the seminar. Very interesting. They're saying it's really important to understand we are not seeing reality. We're seeing a story that's being created for us. And that's being created by our brain. Our brains unconsciously bend our perception of reality to meet our desires and expectations. And they fill in gaps using our past experiences. Those past experiences, perceptions, the beliefs and all that, they will actually shape how we see the world. All of these can bias us. I think this is a very important, by the way, these are not my words. These are actually the statements taken from the research that they've done in here. All of these can bias us. Visual illusions present clear and interesting challenges for how we live. How do we know what's real? And once we know the extent of our brain's limits, how do we live with more humility? I think that's very profound and very interesting for us to know. And think with greater care about our perception. Is it worth arguing about the way I see the world, and I'll try to prove to you that that's the only way. So that's very important. In that thing that was going up and down, even though we know that when we look at that black dot, it's going to give us that illusion, we can't correct it. We still can't see it going diagonal rather than going up and down. It's interesting because that's the brain. Right? The reality is up and down, but no matter what we do, we still perceive it through the experience that we've had. Consciousness in the field. There's a book, interesting book, Lynn McTaggart, I don't know whether you heard of her or not. She's had a few good books, but a few years ago she put that out, called The Field. In there, they're doing some horrible experiments with the rats, but they've got a few experiments in there. I'll pick this one. They teach the rat to go from this part of the maze to the other part through the right path. So there are lots of paths. It learns to get there and get the cheese. Once it learns this is where the horrible part is, they start killing its brain cells because they want to see where the memory is. Is this in the brain or is it outside in the field? So they keep killing the brain cells, but the rat each time knows the path, with no mistakes, goes and gets the cheese. They do this, they kill its brain cells to the extent that it is losing its motor ability. So if they kill more brain cells, it won't be able to walk to the other side. So to that extent, they just get rid of his brain, but it still knows how to get there. That's why through those experiments, she says that we seem to be connected to a field of information. And our brain, as Ross was saying as intro to this talk, that the brain is connected to a field of information. It's a receiver. Thank you. It's a receiver. All right, I've got it wrong. There's another one that I'll talk about is Maharishi effect. I don't know if you've heard of that or not. Yogi Maharishi, 1960s, he predicted if 1% of the population of a place practices transcendental meditation techniques, it will produce measurable improvements in the quality of life for the whole population. That was proven in 1974. They did that transcendental. So that's where the Maharishi effect came into being. And since then, there have been a lot of experiments that they've done, including during the war in Lebanon, that it actually had a great effect in the behavior of people there. Global Consciousness Project by Princeton University. They've got random number generators. They're electronic devices all around the world, just randomly generating numbers. They wanted to see if global consciousness has an effect on the way these gadgets, these electronic number generators, they work. Events such as, and over 20 years they collected about 500 formally defined events in the world. One of them being 9/11, the tsunami in Japan, and a lot of others. What they find is during that, where the globe is looking at an event and they feel for it, they find that these numbers, random number generators, stop being random. So they're affected by the consciousness of the globe. And there are 500 of those examples. During the seminar, I'll go through some of them. So very important to realize this. So there are out of randomness before and during and after. So it goes through like that. Holographic universe. The physicist David Bohm saying that the essential feature of quantum interconnectedness is that the whole universe is unfolded in everything and that each thing is enfolded in the whole. I don't know if you've heard of Nassim Haramein. Recently he's saying that the universe is a flow of information where each point of information contains the whole of creation. By studying the proton, Nassim Haramein discovered the holographic nature of our universe, proving that everything is connected. It goes down to the proton and then goes into what he calls this Planck constant, which is the smallest size that you can think of. And then through that, he actually finds that we are actually connected throughout the whole universe. And he says the small contains the large. And it shouldn't be a surprise to us because in our old traditions and philosophies, we've had that you are God and God is you in Hinduism. And of course, Rumi, the poet, you are not a drop in the ocean, you are the entire drop in the ocean. You've seen this picture, I think a lot of people have seen it. That's the brain cells and that's the galaxies. How profound. Very interesting. I'll see that some people taking photos, okay. Please take it off that 10 minutes. Alright, physical death, the end or transition. Interesting, Ross, you mentioned this institute at University of Virginia, Division of Perpetual Sciences. They've got 50 years of collecting data. 75% of their collection of data about near-death experiences is from cardiac arrest. The reason for that is that there are patients who are in hospitals connected with all the equipment, whether they're in theatre or whether they're in the ward, they're connected. So clinically, when they die for 1 minute or 10 minutes or an hour, they're clinically proven and recorded that they are. So it's not like Paiman saying that, oh, I had a near-death experience the other day and this is what I felt. It's actually scientific. And I'll use their words here. Attitudes increased after near-death experiences. Attitude for spirituality, concern or compassion for others, appreciation of life, sense of meaning or purpose, confidence, flexibility in coping, belief in post-mortem survival. Attitude decreased. Fear of death, 5, thanks. Interest in material possessions, interest in personal status, competitiveness. Evidence of survival from near-death experiences, enhanced cognitions and with impaired brain. Accurate out-of-body perceptions, visit with deceased persons. I think Ross, you mentioned that. Same thing, so you're not aware of someone who's been dead, but through your near-death experience, you see that person on the other side, and that person, when you come back, you see that, well, that person had died a while ago. Alright, some food for thought. What if the purpose of our reality, whether we call it soul, consciousness, energy, the field, whatever, is to cause or create an ever-advancing civilization which is based on essence of love, cooperation and unity. I say ever-advancing civilization because I look at the way our society is evolving, the whole world is evolving. Technology is actually advancing it, and I've got evidences, scientific, that are produced during the seminar, that within the next 30 years, we can't even imagine the things that we're going to have. For me, it's just whatever I think of is going to happen. I know that. It's to that extent. And I've got some calculations on scientific that shows that. So technology is really good, but it needs to be backed up by our humanness, by who we are, and really realizing what the purpose of our life is, what the journey is. I don't want to even think about AI and what it's doing and what it's going to do. Think about it. So, is that our purpose? If we still stay in the competitiveness and survival of the fittest, would that really cater for what we need in this civilization that we're building? What if, throughout this process in this physical life, we learn and acquire qualities, so tools, that are required for further progress of our reality in the next world? Next world or dimension, whatever we want to call it. I always use the example of a baby in the womb of a mother. It is growing there. It is acquiring the tools that it needs once it's born into this life, like the hands and the feet and the tools that we need to progress further in this world. What if ours is the same? Being in this reality, in this world that we are, acquiring qualities and tools that we need to further progress in the next dimension. In conclusion, the brain orchestrates running of this physical body. So it's a vehicle, this body is the vehicle for this journey that we have. And it is in constant communication with the heart to receive messages. As I mentioned before, the heart actually is a center that receives the correct information. What's interpreted is based on the brain. The heart allows us to understand our reality in a universal kind of way, giving us non-physical feelings and perceptions. Quite often, and I dare say that, whatever we feel with our heart is correct. What we've got to be careful of and learn is the language the interpretations with the brain and how it interprets based on our perceptions, based on our belief systems, how to respond to this. So the more we can clean up this pathway, the more we understand this language, the better we are connected with the whole universe and the messages that we receive. Quantum physics, don't need to talk about it no more. Our consciousness, we are all connected at a very fundamental and deep level and have a deep effect on the world we are in and living in. So we have a very deep impact on the world that we're living in, as well as the whole world impacting us as well. So we are a very important participant in this whole system that we're living in. And I think near-death experiences are real, and they have messages for us to know that. Free, in that sense. Thank you. Thanks for your attention.
Maybe let's answer a few questions.
Oh, yes, sorry. Yeah.
To ask you a question.
Of course.
I really love that presentation. It just reinforces for me the connectedness and interconnectedness that we all are. And just thank you for it. So what I would like to ask you is the one comment you made there. Belief in postmodern survival. And can you elaborate a little bit more on that? I'm very interested in the postmodern.
Sure.
I haven't heard that connected with survival.
Okay. What I tried to present here is very unbiased, so I haven't put much of my thoughts into this to say. What I put up there is basically the words of those researchers that they put on there. Basically, what it means from my point of view is that we survive. Like the physical death is not end to this, and life continues. It's basically a transition to the next. Now, because of all those near-death experiences that they have, all the data that they have, they're actually saying that this is real. Like, we transition to the next state of our being. So, in other words, is life after death, which we can call it life after life. So the life continues. We just don't. So when we physically die, it doesn't end. It's not the end for us in here. We just continue. So what we're going to interpret it, I think, is different and depends on our perceptions, our belief systems, and the way we see the world and how it is. But what they're suggesting from the near-death experiences, we just continue. Yes. It's just moving to the next dimension. That's what Thank you. Thanks for your attention. I'm sorry I rushed it through. I hope that I didn't bore you, but that was my choice. I wanted to present this.